Today's conversation is one that I've really been looking forward to. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, you still feel exhausted or off or disconnected in your body, this is going to be a conversation that lands with you. I am super excited to be joined by Dr. Molly Maloof. Dr. Molly is a physician, a founder, a keynote speaker, and the author of The Spark Factor, one of the first guides to biohacking specifically for women. So if you're in my network and I talk about Dave Asprey all the time, Molly is like on a whole nother level. So her work is centered around extending health span, maximizing human potential, and rethinking how we approach health by bringing together medicine, technology, and human behavior. There's like a million things we can talk about today, and I don't even know how we're gonna narrow it down to just a few. But Molly's the founder of M3 Healthspan, a precision medical practice working with entrepreneurs, executives, high performers, ladies, you guys. And she's been advising and partnering with over 150 companies across digital health, biotech, and consumer wellness. She's also the founder, and I'm super excited to talk about this, of
Sure, yeah.
Okay, Adamo Bioscience, where she's exploring something we don't talk about nearly enough, and that is the role of connection, intimacy, and emotional resilience in longevity and overall health. So, Dr. Molly, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
I was looking at the copyright of your book to see how long ago you wrote it, and you wrote it in 2023.
Yeah.
We could go down the biohacking path. We can go down so many different paths, but I do want to ask you, like, you wrote it in 2023. It's been 3 years. And so what would you add to it right now that's not in there?
I would add a lot more information on the cell danger response and what chronic threat signaling does to the body and how it creates so much disarray and really makes you extremely vulnerable to things like intracellular infections and Lyme's disease and mold and a variety of other issues that come up typically when a person's been under chronic stress for too long, or they've had too many stressors building on top of each other. I was in really perfect health when I launched that book. I mean, I was certainly very stressed, but I was juggling 3 businesses, a book launch, and I was working with some of the most preeminent founders in AI. I was like basically on top of the world. I think if I were to write that book again, I would also talk a lot about relationships in a deeper way, because I really felt like I was unstoppable and I had like superpowers and I could do anything. And the more that I optimized my health, the more that I could do. And I also realized that there was almost a diminishing return on satisfaction with my accomplishments, because I was just like accomplishing so much and I wasn't really like, you'd have these moments of like extreme achievement and then you'd be like, okay, cool, what's next? And so like, unfortunately or fortunately, we were talking about this before we started the pod, but if you keep telling the universe, I need to slow down, it's going to give you an opportunity to slow down that's probably not in your control. And I would say the thing that was in my control is I could have made better decisions with the people that I dated at the time, but I had some lessons to learn in relationship, and I ended up in a what I would call very unhealthy relationship, and it really destroyed my nervous system and really messed up my cortisol. And so my cortisol levels were tanked. My nervous system was dysregulated. And I ended up getting really sick in 2024 and basically ended up getting mono first and then Lyme's disease right after that. Then I had a concussion from a bike accident. And those 3 things just totally brought me to my knees. And I mean, I had to work part-time for the first time in forever. And I've had a job since I was in 6th grade. So like I am not used to not working. So when I say that God needed to slow me down, it was like, okay, not only am I going to slow you down, but there's a lot of things that you don't even know, that you think you know about health, that you haven't even encountered. And I've basically been on this journey the last 2 years, really radically upgrading my knowledge base on healing, because I had to heal myself. And thank God, today is March 30th, 2026. It's been 2 years since all that happened. And I feel I feel finally like I'm back to myself. But it was not without an enormous amount of humbling life experience. And the things that it has taught me is that there was a lot I didn't know about mitochondria that I wasn't able to put in the book because I didn't even know about it at the time. And it was really a lot. I learned a lot more about the cell danger response. I mean, I wrote about it in the book, but I didn't write about it in as great of detail as I now teach. So I learned a lot about what that chronic stress, psychosocial stress, and even the choices that we make. I chose to live a very stressful life. And the compounding of that stress really ended up causing a breakdown and making me really susceptible to illnesses. And then those illnesses are known to contribute to fatigue. And so even though I didn't end up with full-blown chronic fatigue, I definitely wasn't full-fledged. Like I used to have the energy of three people, which is why I could run three companies. And to go from like running three companies and writing books and launching courses to like feeling like I can work part-time on one business was a really, really scary. And yet I learned a ton about healing. And so I learned all about how to heal intracellular infections. I learned all about how to repair mitochondrial membranes. I learned all about how to be really careful and really prune your social sphere to the people that really matter and that really care about you. I learned so much about what isolation does to health because I was living fairly isolated on an elk refuge for about a couple of years, which probably played a role in my nervous system issues at the time. And I also learned how much nature can help you heal. And I learned how to essentially detox the body because I ended up, funnily enough, this last year, I ended up with mercury poisoning from too much fish from the farmer's market and cadmium poisoning from too much dark chocolate. And so I had to really upgrade my learning and knowledge bases. And thank God for the many mentors that I have and the incredible doctors and healers that I have in my network. But it's made me a much better doctor, and it's made me a lot more just aware that, like, you know, you can be flying high and you can have major limitations put on you, and God will send you those for your own benefit. And what I've been really waking up to as I've been going through this program called the Gupta program to really get back because the thing about when you get sick is that you have to get out of the mindset that I'm sick. That is like really, really important. So the Gupta program is a brain retraining program. And I recommend anyone out there listening to this who's dealing with any form of chronic illness, if you don't work on the nervous system and the brain's patterning around how you think about your life and your illness, you will not get better. So I would say that like it's really crucial to recognize that there is a certain amount of reprogramming the brain that has to happen for you to not get stuck in the illness mindset forever. And the Gupta program has been phenomenal for that for me. It's been a really, really helpful tool in the toolbox. But yeah, it's been a journey. So that's quite a long monologue right there.
I know you've been on a bit of a health journey. I think you shared pieces of it with me. I didn't realize it was that expensive,
Yeah.
but I agree with you 100%. The mindset has to come first because Brian deals with a lot of back issues. And I said to him recently, because he hasn't been complaining about his back for about 6 or 8 months because he hurt his arm. And I was like, the best thing that ever happened to your back was that you hurt your arm because you stopped focusing so much on the mindset of waking up every day thinking about, is my back going to hurt today?
What that does is it creates central sensitization. So your brain gets sensitized to that feeling of back pain, and now it's like it sticks longer because your brain is like replaying the pain pathways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so important to be able to release that. This retreat, I know I sent you the information on it, is all about taking women out of the day to day, immersing them in nature and different healing modalities that are nature's healing modalities. We have a river, we have beaches, the sunsets, the sunrises, the jungle, the noises, all of it, and immersing them in that to heal their nervous system and the conversations centered around mindset and how to breathe in order to take you from the fight or flight into the rest and digest. And so I'm super excited. I'm bummed you can't be there, but
there's going to be a lot of these types of retreat centers. I heard about one called Aware somewhere in Southern California. And I think there's even a clinic somewhere in Berkeley where it's literally like a nervous system regulation clinic. And I think because of the news cycle, because of the state of America, because of the chronic threat signaling we're getting from the news and from just the challenges that people are facing as a country, I think there's a lot more people that are waking up to like, oh wow, I don't have a regulated nervous system. And I have some tools for those people that I think is really important to talk about, because like there's not you may not have the ability to go on a retreat because you might have a really extensive supplement regimen like me that has to be really, that's very tricky to travel with. Or maybe you just know that like traveling, honestly, for me, I used to travel like twice, 2 to 3 times a month, and I don't have the same kind of capacity to get on an airplane like I used to. Like I just don't have it takes more out of me to travel than it did in the past. And so I'm really careful with how I spend my time right now. It's very important that if you are recovering from anything, that you pace yourself, even in, because like sometimes like I feel really really good, like this week I feel amazing, and if I overdo it in the gym, I'm gonna backslide. It's really really important to just pace yourself, but also recognize there's things that you can do before you even get out of bed in the morning that can help you regulate your nervous system. First would be, there's technologies that are coming out. There's a company called Ilonga that's going to launch in America soon. And I put this thing on my wristband. It's like a wristband you wear for like 10 minutes in the morning. And you lay in bed. It only takes like a few minutes to check, but it's really a high quality HRV monitor. And it's a bit more accurate, I would say, than Aura, but it's also going to tell you like, are you properly recovered? Are you able to actually go to the gym? And it gives you, I mean, it really gives you a much bigger picture of your HRV. So that's one tool you can use coming soon. You can also use your Aura ring to check your HRV in the morning to see where you're at and to determine, okay, if I'm really resourced, maybe I can hit it harder in the gym. And then I also recommend looking at, if you do have an Aura ring, looking at your stress throughout the day. And if your stress is like high stress all day long, you need to put some breaks in throughout the day. Because if you're like a race car that's racing all day long every day and never has a pit stop, it's going to wear out faster. And I was that race car. And so I really love this app by HeartMath that uses the light on your phone to help you measure your heart rate variability in real time and your sense of coherence. So what I do
I
in the
have
morning
that.
is I do some breathing practices with my inner balance, and all this stuff takes like no time at all in the morning. It's just like I'm laying in bed. Well, I do have to go get my phone because I don't sleep with my phone next to my bed. That's crucial. You don't want your phone plugged into the wall next to your bed because it's going to create a much larger electromagnetic field, and that will disrupt your sleep, especially if you're sensitive. And I've had a lot of patients just take their phone out of the room and unplug what's next to their bed. Your bed should not be a station for all of your plugins. Please, if you're listening, people out there, get rid of all the things plugged in next to your bed and move them outside of your bedroom. You don't need that much electromagnetic energy around your sleep.
And around your head, because our
Your
nightstands are
head.
right next to our head.
I mean,
I've
yeah,
recently done that.
you just got to do that. And then there's also cool companies like Pulsetto. And I have a really big device over here called it's called a newbie. And there's a lot of different ways. And I actually have three different nervous system regulation devices in my room. One is called a neuropod, and they're all different uses. One is the new fit is like a really hardcore device that's like frequency based, and you can use it for working out or recovery. It's really expensive, not really for most people. And then the neuropod is a bit more expensive, or it's a bit less, much less expensive, but still expensive. But it's also been cleared by the EU. It's like CE cleared in the EU, and I think it's actually been FDA cleared as well. And it's an actual vagus nerve stimulator using your earlobe. And then the other thing would be the pulsetto, which goes on your vagus nerve on your neck. It's a little messier, but people tend to like that one a lot because you can feel it immediately. So there's all these different tools that you can use to start getting more regulated that are not terribly expensive. Like the neuropod and the pulsetto are fairly affordable, I'd say, for most people.
Right. And I think one of the things that women really need to understand, we're not just talking about women, we're talking about people in general, but I think women need to understand is like you can also just take off your shoes and go stand outside on your grass or lay down on
Grounding,
the ground.
grounding,
You know, like
sunlight, first thing in the morning, grounding.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
don't schedule any calls till 10 a.m. you know?
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
have control over your schedule. You don't have to be doing everything all the time, all at once.
Yeah.
If I find my schedule overloaded for too long, I just start telling my assistant, don't schedule me unless it's these hours. And then people just they don't want to schedule with you because you're like, okay, it's not going to work for my schedule. But I think you really have to guard your time as a woman these days because it's so easy for all of your time to be given away, and that is not going to help you recover either. And so, for all those women out there that need a permission to actually spend time for themselves, it's like you need to actually wake up. Like we're not living in alignment with our bodies as women. We're not supposed to be stressed out nonstop every day, all day. That's not how we're going to get better. And I lived like that for a long time, for about 30 years. I was in a pretty much nonstop state of achievement and purposely stressing myself out so that I actually could deal with my own ADHD. And we're running on stress hormones, even if they're not from pharmaceuticals, it's still its own form of addiction. And so it's if it wasn't for like the deep therapy that I'm doing right now with NLP hypnotherapy and with the Gupta program, like I have two amazing therapists. I don't think I would be able to actually even say all this stuff because I had the mindset that like I had a very masculine mindset that like if I wanted to succeed and compete in the world, I had to be like a man. And
Hmm.
I think women are rising and we're going to have a lot more say in what the world looks like in the next few decades. And because of that, like, I think it's up to us to actually send a, big message to the world that like, we don't want to live the way that we've been living in the past. It's not working for any of us. And if you want to live that way, great. But like, I think there's a lot of ways that women don't value themselves enough and don't charge enough for what they do. And so they end up in these positions where they're like undercharging for their business and then they're overstressed because they have to take on too many clients. And it's like, I have to coach doctors and nurses all the time on like their rates. Cause I'm like, if you're like a world class talent, which a lot of my friends are, and a lot of women underestimate how talented they are, you need to price yourself properly and not end up undervaluing yourself
Absolutely.
and then running on empty.
Yeah. And it's been such a stigma, I think, for so many years. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 53. I was
Me too.
raised by a dad.
You look amazing. I remember
Okay.
meeting you in person and I was like,
I was
really?
raised by a
Yeah,
thank you. I've got that young energy.
totally.
But I'm a recovering workaholic and I'm a recovering daughter of a father who was born in 1926. He was in World War II. And all he used to say to me as a young woman was, I see these women climbing the corporate ladders, sitting at the boardroom tables. You could be that woman one day. And so that's all I worked to do was to be that woman. And then I realized I hate working for other people. I want to work for myself. I'm going to be an entrepreneur, as if that was
Yeah.
going to be any easier. Not that I
Oh,
thought it
yeah.
was going to be easier, but then I ran, yeah. Then I ran on the hamster wheel and the roller coaster for 12 years, more than that. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 30.
Yeah.
I say I came out of the womb an entrepreneur, but I started my first official company at 30, built it to a couple $1 million in revenue and lost a couple $1 million. And it was that ongoing stress over 12 years. I was finally like, I lost the passion for this. I'm done.
Yeah.
But I lived in the masculine. And I used to say, like, how am I going to find a man that is going to love this like masculine woman? And so, I got married, had two beautiful children, got divorced, and then found a man who was the first man ever in my life who made me feel safe and seen enough to drop into my feminine. And
Mm.
that's a lot of work that we are always doing with each other, but that we want to help other people do as well. We're doing a
How did you
retreat on
find him?
that in, how did I find him?
Yeah.
At a bar.
Oh my God, that's great.
I found him at a bar in town, and I mean, he's the most amazing thing. You've met him. He's delicious.
You
He's
guys are a great
super
couple.
studly and such a man, but he's also like such a teddy bear too. He's just like this very safe. He's safe not just for me, but for like, I feel like all the women that he meets and are in his life, he is that safe place for them too. I'm always like, you need love and hugs and care, and like, you just take Brian for a minute. Like, he's just so delicious and loving. And I feel very, very grateful. But we want to share that with other people. And that's why, like, I want to get into the conversation about what you're building with the Adamo method, because I feel like there has just been so much female masculinity going on in the world that we are so dysregulated from it. And we need to help the men in our life understand who we are, how we've been running all of these years, and what we need from them in order to be seen and heard and feel safe, so that we can allow them to step into their masculine so we can drop back into our feminine.
I definitely don't think our program, unfortunately, covers all of masculine and feminine dynamics, but I will say one thing, and that's that a lot of women find themselves in the orgasm gap pretty massively in relationship. I wouldn't say I am an expert in human relationships, but I will say that I know quite a lot more about sex than the average doctor. And it's funny because when you bring up even the word sex, it's such a charged word. But really, what is sex? It's like literally direct union with another person physically. And by nature of that physical union, there is a deep emotional and spiritual connection that happens. But it is direct union with someone. And it's how we make children, and it's how we bond, and it's also how we express ourselves in relationship. And it's what separates a platonic from a romantic relationship with a opposite sex or the same sex. It's like the difference is you are usually having sex. So it's sad that I see a lot of people in their marriages and in their relationships after the first, few months to a few years, a lot of people, their sex lives drops off. And I think there's a reason for that. When we get into a workout regimen or even nutritional regimen, there can be a certain amount of boredom that can come from doing the same thing. And usually what do you do next? You go and you try a different workout class, or you get a new cookbook. But in relationship, we're with that other person, right? And so we don't have the option of just getting another partner necessarily. So what does that leave us with? Well, where do we learn about having great sex? We unfortunately learn it through porn, and it's not great for most women, what we see in pornography. It is extremely designed for the masculine gaze. It's not really designed for the feminine gaze. And so what we end up with, frankly, as women, is this orgasm gap, this problem where our partners are having an orgasm every time, and we're kind of left at the sidelines for 70% of the time we might have an orgasm, but that 30% is big. And I've actually met women that have gotten divorced specifically because they were so unsatisfied sexually, and they were sick of having their husbands penetrate them in a way that made them feel like they were just being masturbated with. And that's crude to say it, but like they felt like their partner was masturbating with their body. And that is not like sacred union. That is something that is just not pleasant. I think when I started this company, Adamo, the reason why I started it is because I didn't even know how to have an orgasm with a man for like the first decade of my sex life. And that sucked a lot, because you basically feel like you're having this performative experience with a partner and you're not really there in it with them. And what I discovered in the process of studying female sexuality is that there's a lot of reasons for this. One is our society treats female sexuality like it is dangerous and like it is a problem, and that we are encouraged to be as sexual as possible physically in our superficial experience of our appearance, but we're not actually supposed to have sex. And so there's this problem where you need to be sexually viable, but you can't actually have sex. And so that puts a lot of women in this position where they feel like if they have any real desire, they have to shut it down. Or maybe their religion created a relationship to sex that sex was only for marriage or only for your husband. So they never actually got to experiment when they were dating. And then by the time that they end up getting married, they don't have any experience and they don't know what good is. And so they're just, they're like, this must just be what sex is like. A lot of the world has arranged marriages, and those people don't have any handbook for learning how to have great penetration. And then on top of that, there's just this lack of education that just isn't taught. We just aren't taught about what does it mean to have great penetrative sex. And so when I was designing the Adama method, it was really because I was like, I feel like a lot of men don't want to go to therapy, but they do want to have more sex, right? And a lot of women would rather, like, women would rather husbands meet them through the emotional place, but to get them to actually do that takes like a lot of effort. So the program is a psychosexual education for both men and women who are interested in actually really deepening their relationship to their partner and to themselves. And it brings you through a journey that helps guide you through what does it mean to become more physically embodied in your experience sexually? What does it mean? What does it mean to have erotic individuation or sexual sovereignty, which means those are two different things. And these are from the work of Sayeda Desolé. And so erotic individuation is basically you have a unique mind that is going to get aroused and turned on with unique drivers. And you also have a body that is yours and only yours. And you have say over how it is touched, how you receive, or how you give. You have say over that. And so we don't teach these two core concepts of like, I have a unique brain that gets turned on by unique things, and my body is my body, and I deserve to have autonomy over it. And I want to have some say in the experience of what I like and don't like. And so because we don't know how to communicate what we like and don't like, verbally or non-verbally, and we don't even know how to speak about sex, we end up in these unfortunate situations where there's a lot of unnecessary pain and suffering in relationships, and even before you're in a relationship, that happens because of this lack of education. And so it is a really deep program. I mean, it will bring you a really different perspective on sex than you've ever been taught or even seen, and give you a lot larger of a repertoire in terms of what you can do in the bedroom when it comes to penetration. And one of the things we designed it for was that we knew there was a lot of women experiencing painful penetration. And that was one of the core things we wanted to solve for, because we know that obviously, like, sex is not just about penetration. There's so much that goes into sex being good that has nothing to do with a penis and a vagina. But that specific area of penetration is actually where there's a lot of pain and suffering for women. And I think that's part of the reason why we decided to tackle it in our program, because we wanted to figure out how do we actually change the entire relationship to sexuality so that women felt like they had a lot more autonomy over their experience, and that also they were able to bring a partner into them instead of having their partner directly penetrate them. So it's a really different orientation, and it's awesome because now you have not just regular penetrative sex you can have with your partner, which is very friction oriented, but you can incorporate what's known as suction-based sex, which is the work of Erin Michael, who is a somatic sex therapist we worked with to develop this program. And so the combination of the psychosexual work and the somatic work means that you now have a very different way of relating to a partner. And the goal is that you end up with really deeper connection.
Yes.
It's a lot more.
There's so much there. So I should write down my questions as we're going. What I think is really important that you touched on is that there is such a stigma around sex. And my daughter, who's 16, is in the other room. She's probably cringing hearing this conversation. But yeah. I remember saying to my older one, it's not just about him. And I think so many women are scared to have those conversations with their younger daughters. And I think it's so important to start those conversations early. They're learning about this baseline. I wouldn't even call it education in their health classes. And then there's really nobody out there that is giving them any information on how do I find out what feels good for me. And when my now 18-year-old, I think she was maybe 15, I was listening to Emily Morse's book, Smart Sex. I think that's the one that it was. Yeah, Smart Sex. And she got in the car and she's like, ew, turn it off, turn it off. And I was like, listen to me. You're either going to listen to this chapter or we're going to have the conversation. There's things that you need to understand and there's things that you need to learn and nobody's teaching it to you. And I'm sure it's like, ew, I don't really want to have this conversation with my mom. And I offered to buy her first vibrator. And she was like, you're disgusting. And then her best friend, like a week later, was like, you can buy me one.
It's so funny.
She's like,
my dad threw mine away when he found it. When I was in high school, I was like,
really? I literally did like cartwheels on.
that's the funniest thing. Yeah, it's
I
just
saw my
funny,
daughter.
right?
She's going to kill me. I may have to
Like,
cut this part out.
best thing that we can do for our kids is give them a relationship to sex that doesn't make it taboo, that doesn't make it
I know.
this like weird thing. You know, what I love about the Jewish religion is that it's so not, it doesn't treat sex like it's a big deal at all. It's like, this is just a part of your life. And Christianity, I still consider myself a Christian, but I do consider the way that Christianity and even Catholicism treats sexuality is that it creates more problems than it solves by its orientation towards it. When you make something like when you make something wrong, considered to be like profane, that's actually sacred, it makes it more exciting to young people to go do. And when you make it something that's like, oh, this is just a part of existence, this is a really beautiful, special part of life, you should really treat it with a lot of love and respect, like you should treat your body. It creates a different orientation for young people. And I really feel like it would be amazing if we could teach the Adama method in schools, but I don't see our country ever getting to that point. But it would really help a lot of young
I
people.
don't see it either.
It would really help a lot of people avoid, sexual trauma, because a lot of the reasons why sexual trauma even happens is because there's no language around consent happening in young people's lives. So no means no is of course true. And in a state of fear and threat, your body will freeze and your body will not be able to say anything. And that is known polyvagal research. And so it's kind of like, we're not even learning polyvagal theory in high school. So there's a lot of people that find themselves in situations and unfortunately experience unnecessary traumatic experiences because they don't know how to speak about sex before it starts to happen. And then when it's happening, they don't know how to say no, they're frozen. And then before they know it, it's destroyed the lives of both the male and the female. And so it's like, I really feel like sexual traumas largely can be avoidable if we had better education. But we're just not doing that as a culture. And so I think if you're going to teach your kids about sex, you also need to teach them about sexual trauma. And it's funny, like and by the way, this is not a position of blame in any possible way, but like my dad used to put knives in my bag when I went to college. And that didn't stop me from getting raped in college, Like I didn't know what they were for. I didn't know that I should take it out with me when I go partying. I didn't know that. Like, my dad just slipped him in my suitcase thinking that will protect her. And that's not going to help. Like, if you don't talk about the problem, which is, hey, college is unsafe. Young men are basically like running with major amounts of hormones and they don't know what they're doing. And people are intoxicated and stuff happens that shouldn't happen. And 20% of young girls are raped in college. 20% of all women have been raped. And that's CDC data. And it's probably underreported. So I would just say to the women listening out there, if you have daughters and sons, men can be raped too. I dated a man who had been raped in college, and he had a child with the woman. He was passed out. He had been drinking, and we don't talk about this, but we need to have these conversations around what consent really is. And that consent needs to be embodied. You need to know how to read yes, polyvagal yes, my body's open. I'm exposing my abdomen. I'm saying yes. Closed is no. Hunched over is no. Frozen is no. And like, that's not taught to young boys. They don't know this. And young women. And so sadly, a lot of stuff happens that has effects on a woman's life for the rest of her life. Adamo was basically meant to be a program for couples, but also it would be a great program for a young couple to work through. It would be great couple, especially the people out there that are in these religious communities like Orthodox Jews and, people who are in arranged marriages in Indian culture. I feel like that's an audience that probably would really resonate with this. But also any relationship that just feels like it's found a rut in their sex life and really wants to rediscover their partner. We had people that were married for like 20 years in our first program. We did a program with the therapy, and it was super effective at helping people increase feelings of love and connection between their partners. It was really effective for increasing orgasm quality and frequency. It was very helpful for increasing sexual satisfaction. It actually helped with erection in men, which is great. And so it really did what we designed for it to do, which was to improve love, both physically and emotionally between partners, and also improve sexual markers of sexual satisfaction and sexual dysfunction. So a lot of it's
And
listed on our
let's
website.
not discount women right now that are in menopause and
Yeah,
sex
people
has
think that
become
sex is
painful.
over.
Right. Yeah, like I don't need to have sex anymore. Like I'm in menopause. I'm a menopausal woman, and it's like this is like the time of your life. Like
Oh
your
my God.
kids are out of the house.
You don't have to have like a risk of pregnancy. It's funny. People that I worked with to build this program were about a decade older than me, and they were having absolutely the best sex of their lives. They, were obviously they were also in the field of sexuality, but I would say that like there's this idea that sex is supposed to get worse as you get older. And actually, it can get better. I would say if you are feeling a lot of pain, you need to consider vaginal estrogen. It's something that every woman should be on once you hit menopause,
Absolutely.
not just topical, not just oral, but the vaginal is really important. Getting your hormones balanced is really important for your sex drive because sex hormones are what drives the sex drive. So you need testosterone, you need estrogen, you need progesterone. But then that's also important to look at your stress hormones because if you're running low cortisol or high cortisol, you're going to be not fully balanced in your sex hormones. So it's really important to get them all looked at. But I would say for those menopausal women, take care of your pelvic floor. There's a lot of pelvic floor exercises you can learn to do. You can get a pelvic floor therapist. But if you don't take care of that pelvic floor, which by the way, sex can help you do, and this program does teach a lot of pelvic floor work is in this program. We teach you how to push your pelvic floor out, how to pull, how to map your pelvic floor. There's a lot of people walking around with numb or painful pelvic floors, and they have no idea that that is happening to them. And so when you learn to release those parts of your pelvic floor, when you learn how to actually recognize it, like what is tension, what is numbness, what does pain feel like, and what does it feel like for those things to be moved through, then you can really start to open. And it's funny that like the pelvic floor is so ignored. And so women just like wake up with these pelvic floor prolapses wondering what the heck happened. And it starts with incontinence, right? It starts with like, oh, a little bit of leakage here and there. But like when you start losing estrogen, you lose a lot of function in your pelvis. So that's why it's so important to not overlook just like the whole big picture down there. And like there's even a company called Photona that makes a laser that you can go get this thing called Incontilase, and it can actually tighten your pelvic floor in like 2 sessions. So there's a lot of things that you can do technologically. There's things like the Joylux wand that's a red light for the pelvic, for the vagina, for rejuvenation. There's pelvic floor electrical stimulation devices you can do, but they require practicing for like 30 minutes a day for like you have to do them consistently. So whatever you're going to do consistently is what's going to work for you, but like I feel like women's bodies get so ravaged through pregnancy, and the things that you see happen in like a C-section are astonishing, and then like let alone the episiotomies that happen to women. And so they're just kind of like left to heal after pregnancy without realizing that there's a lot of dysfunction that can happen in and around the pelvic floor that's never really treated properly. So I highly recommend if any woman out there is listening to this who struggles with endometriosis, who struggles with pelvic floor pain, with SIBO, with dyspareunia, with vaginismus, there's a company called Clear Passage, and it's a 5-day program. You have to go to a location in like they've got no locations all over the country, but they train these pelvic floor therapists, and they literally do deep pelvic floor therapy with a gloved hand and fingers, and they do abdominal therapy as well, and they will release adhesions. They opened up one of my fallopian tubes that was blocked. Like it was amazing what was able to be done, and I did mine in 4 days because I did like an intensive. Highly recommend Clear Passage. I can't speak more about it than like this because you really got to experience it directly to know what it is, but it's a lot of deep tissue work. And I really felt like just like years of, it's like you get massage all over your body, right? But you don't get your pelvic floor or your abdomen massaged. Even if they do your abdomen, they're not going that deep, and they're not releasing, they're not actively feeling for adhesions and releasing those. And so it's really an intensive kind of experience, and it was awesome. I mean,
Also probably very liberating and freeing
oh my
to be
God.
that vulnerable because we're taught that like there's like so much shame around it.
Well, we guard a lot, right? As women, 10% of women have endometriosis and don't even get it treated properly and don't even know that they have it because the diagnostics are so archaic. They think that you have to have a laparoscopy to get a diagnosis when there's perfectly good imaging technologies like specific types of ultrasounds and MRIs that are specific to endometriosis. And so there's just so many women that have just spent their entire lives suffering. So it's not to say that like all of pain and during sex is due to your partner, but if you are one of those women that is going through menopause or does have a condition like endometriosis and you want to have like satisfying sex, you really should learn how to use the Adama method because it's going to give you a bigger repertoire and you're not going to have that level of suffering that you have with friction-based sex. I've had to tell my multiple partners this before. I've had a few boyfriends since I started this company and dated like a couple guys, and both of them I had to say, look, like no woman wants to be jackhammered. It's just not what they're interested in. It's not like, it's not hot for us. It doesn't make us feel good. It hurts, and it takes us 20 minutes to get aroused. And
Right.
so
Which a lot
if
of
you're
women don't even understand
it's like
at
if a man,
all.
if it took a man, it's the other big thing is that we expect men to be just aroused in a second. But I've actually had a partner tell me, "Will you flirt with me? Like I need a little bit more stimulation before I'm like really ready to go." And men need arousal just as much as women do. So we need to actually like really lean into slowing down and really taking our time. But so many people look at sex as like this thing you just got to get it over with. And both men and women need a certain amount of arousal to really be fully ready for a beautiful experience. But it's gonna make a big, big difference in that quality of that experience.
Yeah.
And by
Also,
default,
you touched on this earlier. I wanted to come back to when Brian and I held a retreat in November,
yeah,
and we had everybody take the erotic blueprint test
I
before
love
the
this
retreat.
thing. Yeah,
And then we had like two sessions at the retreat around your erotic blueprint. And then we
yeah,
mixed everybody up. So nobody knew what other people's were. And so you had to go sit through the kink one, whether you were a kink or not,
yeah,
and explore your edges on like what's comfortable, what's not comfortable, where's that sitting in my body? Why am I not comfortable with this? And we're not experts by any stretch, but we love to learn and we love to play. And so we were like, and people were like, what the hell is this? What am I getting myself into on this retreat? I thought it was about like life, love, and longevity. And I was like, it is. And this is a huge part of it. And so it was honestly like one of the funnest things we did. I'm going to do it again on this
really
retreat,
great.
even though it's all women. I think it's just such a conversation that so many women are afraid to have. And it's like, but it's one of those like when you're sitting around in your pajamas and you can like have these intimate conversations about, the things that you're scared to talk about to most people. And
Yeah,
so, but I think, I love that you're incorporating that in there. And I will say, like, after I was doing my research on you and reading about this, I recommended it to two people.
yeah,
And they're
yeah.
in their later stage of life. And, they saw that Brian and I are doing these like life, love, longevity workshops. And we talk about couples retreats. And she's like, I don't even know if I can handle a couples retreat. And she's in her like late fifties, been married forever, but she's like, I want it again. And
Yeah,
so I recently recommended this to them and it's affordable, the
totally.
Adamo method. Yeah,
Yeah.
which, is a beautiful thing because there's so many programs out there that you're like, oh my God, I can't even afford to do this.
I know. I know. Well, I mean, we realize that there's such a barrier psychologically to entry to, like, pun intended, for people to really want to wrap their head around doing something that is like actually about sex education. And we definitely would like to get it out to a broader audience. We haven't like marketed it extremely effectively, but the more that we can talk about it on podcasts and really, get the word out about what it's about, the more that we think we'll be able to help a lot of people.
Right. Well, I'm glad that I'm able to get the word out for you.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
definitely my audience is, it's menopausal women and they're at a point where it's like either hurts or they've just lost interest. And, it's there's also a big part of it that, like you said, like we don't want to be jackhammered. And, people ask me, again, earmuffs in the other room, but,
Yeah.
like, what's your sex life like? I mean, Fry and I are second marriage. We've been married for 10 years. We've been together for 12 years, but we're newlyweds. Like
Yeah. I know you guys
we're,
have like a remarkably good relationship. It's so cool to watch
thank
you
you.
two.
Thank you.
I would say, this is the funny thing about this company, Adamo, is it started as a pharmaceutical company, and we were really aiming to see if we could create drugs for sexual dysfunction for women. And we actually created some really cool products. There was no chance they were going to get approved by the FDA because they were just too powerful. One was an actual like real live love, like love potion that could reproduce feelings of romantic love and limerence. But the problem with that is that we realized it was really unethical to basically bottle and sell love. So we were like, we're not going to sell that. We're not going to get it approved anyway. There's no chance that we'll approve that. It's
I
just,
hope you made some bottles and stashed them away somewhere.
I unfortunately, it's a longer story I'll get into with you privately about what happened with that. But I definitely did a lot of research on, various substances that can help. And I think for women out there that are really struggling to get into their bodies, hemp extract is something that really should not be overlooked. There's a company called MD Bio that makes a product line of just hemp extract. So it's largely CBD based, but it has a very small fraction of THC in it, like less than a milligram. And I have found that like just having the right slight, very vague, just very tiny dose of THC, barely perceptual, is really helpful for getting a woman into her body. And I spoke to multiple investors that said if it wasn't for the legalization of marijuana and the microdosing of marijuana, they would never have been able to figure out how to really break through their barriers of their sex lives. So I think that's something that's really potent. And then I do think that if you've had sexual trauma and you can find like a proper MAPS trained therapist, MDMA or psilocybin assisted therapy, like a deep trauma working session. And I'm not talking heroic doses, I'm talking like a medical dose of these medicines can really help you work through those traumatic experiences. And that is also to say that there are definite risks of MDMA and psilocybin. MDMA less risky, but still has risks. Psilocybin, always a chance of if you take the wrong dose to end up with psychosis or schizophrenia. But that would happen typically in people who have with a large predisposition, like a family
Mhm.
history of major mental illness or their own history of mental illness. So I would never really blanket recommend any psychedelic to the audiences of anyone on a podcast. But I would say that like there's enough evidence now that suggests that if you do have a really deep-seated trauma, that there are avenues of healing through these medicines, but it's super dependent on the practitioner and the quality of the medicine. And it's also like it also comes with real risk. So I wouldn't just like say go try it, but I would say maybe learn about it. And I would say that I think these are going to get approved eventually, but not anytime soon. So there are countries where they are somewhat legal, like Mexico and Colombia. And actually Australia, they're legal. So maybe if you wanted to go to a country where they have legalization packaged properly, that's possible, but you really have to choose your shaman or doctor like you would your neurosurgeon. So like I can't tell people to do these in the United States. I can say that there are places that are legal in the world, but first and foremost, know that like you just do not rush into this kind of thing because uncovering trauma is kind of like it can be like releasing a dragon that has been dormant for like years. So it can really destabilize a person if they don't have proper preparation. I would even say ayahuasca is an even safer pathway to take, but I would only go to like clinics like Soltara in Costa Rica or what is the other one? Soltara and Rhythmia. I wouldn't go to a place that doesn't make this their bread and butter of all that they do because even ayahuasca can cause damage. But I started the company in the psychedelic space specifically because I knew that these medicines had real potential, But as I learned through working in that space, they also had a lot of real risks and real problems associated with them. So I'm not like as rah cheerleader for these things. I always tell people like they helped me, but they definitely are not going to help everybody and they can cause harm. But for the people who are really suffering and really know that they've got like a pretty bad traumatic experience that they haven't been able to work through, you might want to consider something like that because it could potentially unlock a really different experience for you in intimacy.
And I want to come back to something you said earlier, which made me think about the mindset for women. It's so mental for us. And I think that that also gets really overlooked because men don't quite understand. They're like, well, if I'm aroused in, a blip of a minute, like, why can't you be? Like, don't I have to just come over and like pat you on the ass and you're good to go? But I think a lot of people don't understand that for us, you have to get into our heads and we have to get out of our heads and then back into our heads. So for us, it takes a lot longer. It's hard to come off of like, driving the kids and being, the mommy shuttle and then get the family fed and get the kids to bed. And then nighttime comes around. It's like, all right, are you ready to go? It's like, no, I'm not ready to go. I've just been in like mommy mode all day. Like I need to wash that off. So I think, there also is such a big gap with getting women to understand too that there's different ways for them to drop out of mommy mode and into, or even like get out of work mode and into like, okay, this is important for me. Almost like you're going to put on your shoes and get yourself in the mindset of going and having a great workout. You need to, take off the shoes and get in the mindset of like, I'm going to have a great night of intimacy. So there's so much to learn there also. And, for us, like, I have to say, one of the things that I think also gets really overlooked, and I've said this to many women, even single women, I was like, it doesn't matter if you're with somebody or not. Like, use it or lose it. Like, you have to keep it going.
Masturbation.
And I think
another thing I would also say is like, if you go through all of your 40s and you're starting to lose hormones and you're not tracking, you could end up like some of my clients in their 50s where they have fully gone through menopause and only are starting testosterone like after being deficient for 15 years. And your body has changed, your receptor sensitivity has changed. So if you want to keep those receptors sensitive, you need to keep them active. And if you don't replace what you're missing, you will not feel the same. And I don't care what some of these influencers say on Instagram. They're like, oh, I'm going through menopause and I'm juicy as can be. I don't care what those people say. I know the science. And I am a big believer in hormone replacement. And apparently the rest of the country is now because we have a massive shortage in estrogen patches. So
I know.
reality is that we are living in an unprecedented time of access to technologies and tools that women have never had in the history of humankind. And you can measure everything at home now. So I would recommend getting a Mira and getting a bunch of test strips and starting to track your cycle and really intimately getting to know your body. So you know what a healthy cycle looks like. You know what a stress cycle looks like. You know what an ovulatory cycle feels like. Women are so poorly educated on their own bodies that they don't even know what normal is anymore. And there's so much pain and suffering that is just like written off and not actually investigated properly. I would highly recommend listening to the podcast by Jolene Brighton on endometriosis for women out there. I just listened to 8 of her podcasts. She's launching a program. She's a naturopath. And she interviewed all of these doctors and surgeons. And I found myself with my jaw on the floor. Like, how did I not know that this was affecting so many women? And I have women with endometriosis in my practice, which is why I listen to podcasts. Because I'm like, I'm going to go and educate myself. And I was flabbergasted at how much I did not know. And what I was going by was what the literature said. But the medical literature is not always the cutting edge of what's actually happening in the world. And a lot of what you need to learn about is like, how are things done differently in different countries? So like Europe has a very different treatment program for endometriosis than America. So I would just say women out there, like we're really lucky. Like we're really, really lucky. We have so many more tools, but there's still a lot of work that has to go into educating yourself. And then you have to educate your partner because they need to know what you're doing and what you're going through. You can share your mirror results with your partner. You can have him track your cycle with you. And men are going to find a lot more ease and empathy when they can actually see something objective, because that's how their minds work. And when they objectively see, oh, wow, you're really running low on progesterone. You must be feeling crappy right now in your luteal phase. They can have a little bit more empathy for you than like,
Right.
why are you being such a bitch? Are you about to start your period? And it's like,
Hmm.
you really want to go there? Like, no, like maybe understand what's actually going on first and then teaching your partner, because they don't know that we are a big black box of confusion for men.
Totally.
And so it's just really important that, like, if you have the means to do the tracking, like, find a doctor who can prescribe Mira to you. I get wholesale prices. You probably can as a podcaster, but like, we gotta, like, they are not cheap, but it is the best investment. Like, for 3 months of tracking your period, you can get, it's the cost of a Dutch test, a single
Right.
Dutch test. So like, there's
I
a
have a
lot
Dutch
you can
test sitting
do.
right here waiting to go.
I love Dutch, and I'm not gonna say get rid of the Dutch, because Dutch is fantastic, but
Yeah.
you're
Some
not
women
gonna
don't
get
even
that.
know what a Dutch test is unless they're seeing a functional medicine doctor. Like that's the other thing is I did a program last year with my functional medicine doctor and 18 women who all did their Dutch tests around the same time. And then she went through and like explained what your results mean and like what different categories you fall into. But people are like, what is a Dutch test and why should I take one? And I'm like, oh, geez, like this is like a whole podcast in and of itself. And so we did a whole podcast on like hormones 101. I wanted to say one of the things I recommended to somebody earlier this week who's 40 years old, and I asked her to take a look at the app, and she was like, "I'm not quite there yet," and she's like, "But I want to know like what I should be thinking about and what I should be doing as I start to get into those perimenopause years." And I said, one of the best things I ever did was I feel like I preempted menopause by going on hormones before I even had any symptoms. I was
This
on
is the thing.
progesterone.
So smart. Like,
Yeah. And I
women
was like,
need
I
a little
learned
bit
what
of,
my numbers were. I
yeah.
did a Dutch test when I was in my early 40s. So I knew like where my baseline should be, how I was processing my
And that's
hormones.
why you're aging
And,
so well, Haley,
oh,
because
thanks.
you haven't had that hormone deficiency for a decade, you know? Which a lot of women are just, that's when they start hormones, is after they've been slowly winding down and being like, what's going on? And like, man, we could do a whole nother podcast on peptides and what you can do through perimenopause, but like, that's a whole nother discussion.
I know. And I think I maybe asked you three questions that were on my list because the
I know.
conversation's been
Well, we can do a part two if you want. I'm happy to do a part two.
This has been amazing conversation. Amazing.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, and I always say like it's going to go in the direction it's going to go. I can come in like with a million questions for you, but I just want to like truly say thank you for the work you're doing in the female space because I
Aw,
think it's been such a bro world out there and
for
the
sure.
reason why I built this app and put so many amazing female practitioners in it is because, and I'm not plugging the app at all, it's not even like out there for real yet, but it was because there's so many people that are just not educated yet about even lifestyle changes. And you were like, it's really simple. Like, yeah, it is because so many people don't even know, like, I should wake up and get morning sunlight and drink a glass of water to rehydrate from what I lost the night before. They just don't know. And so, if you're like dipping a toe on this journey or, you're up to your knees or you're in over your head, like there's something in there for everybody. And there's so much information out there. And when Brian and I first got into this space, we were like, we want to kind of be the go-to people where we have vetted products, we have vetted practitioners and experts in the space so that we can bring that information to other people. And I feel like, our podcast and the app is really our way of doing that. I'm no doctor, I'm no expert, but I've done my fucking homework and I follow and meet amazing people like you. And I am my own N of one experiment.
I mean, what I hope the
So,
women get out of this podcast is like, you have so much more power than you realize to heal yourself and to live a more vibrant and alive life. And one of your vital signs is your libido. And so, like, there's a lot there. Like, you don't have to look at aging as this like miserable thing that like everything's downhill after 40. Like, We are age so differently than our parents, and we don't have to get frail and we don't have to get sick. And if we do get sick, we can get well. And that's what I'm here to really promote.
I love that. I'm here for you.
You.
I'm going to drop the mic on that because I think it's a great way to end. I do want to just do like a quick rapid fire. Like,
Sure.
what's your favorite supplement that you cannot live without?
Body Bio PC. It's changed my life. It has fixed my cell membranes. If you're running on empty consistently, if you burned out more than once in your life, you probably need PC. And it's great for detox. It's just really like if it wasn't for PC, I don't think I wouldn't have made the amount of progress I've made.
All right, we're going to drive a link to it. We can drop it in the captions.
Yeah, Dr. Molly is my code if you want to use it.
Okay.
It's expensive. I get the big jar.
Peptide? Awesome.
Peptide, probably Selink because it's just the most amazing tool for stress and for anxiety. I was never an anxious person until I got sick. And I think neuroinflammation and just like a disrupted GABA system is really problematic for a lot of women. And they turn to SSRIs and they get hooked on them, or they turn to benzos and they become addicted to them. And there is a tool that you do not have to worry about getting addicted to called Link, and 300 micrograms intranasally or injected, game changing for just calm, centeredness. I feel amazing when I use Selink. It's like totally underappreciated.
Okay, awesome. What is your favorite biohack that you can't live without? Free biohack, like from nature or something someone doesn't have to pay for that they could start doing right away.
Okay, so when you meditate, a lot of people struggle with meditation, and I really did until I started incorporating prayer. It made me more motivated to meditate because I was able to like use meditation to calm my mind. And then from there, I basically call in my guides and I have them kind of put a protective shield around me. And then I literally like sit and say, I want to connect to God, to like the Holy Spirit directly. And like we act like we have to have these intermediaries of church, of pastors, of Jesus. And it's like we're not taught in that we can just directly connect to God. And when you do that, you get answers that you just really wouldn't get. And maybe it's your higher self speaking, but connecting to something greater than you is this, it's this direct conduit to power that you don't have on your own. And it's been really, really, really crucial for helping me get through some rough moments in the last couple of years. It's
And I
prayer.
have to say, maybe it's just the space that I'm in right now, and I'll call it woo woo, but like I feel like there's just so much more spirituality out there now than ever before. And, ask
And a
me
lot of
like 10 years ago.
spiritual warfare. There's
The
a lot
what?
more people aware. There's a lot more spiritual warfare than people realize. There's a lot of negativity in the world and a lot of like hate. And the best thing you can do to protect yourself from all of that is to like connect to God and source.
Yeah, and choose love. Just choose love
Totally.
every day.
Yeah. I mean, I
That's it.
really believe in just like directly connecting to, it's like very Gnostic kind of like work, but it's like more mystical kind of relationship to God than just like what you're taught. But it's so game changing to like just remember he or she, whatever you want to call it, is there. And you don't have to like go, you don't have to be in a church to access it.
Whatever you call it, like the field, the space, the universe, like just, call it whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. But learning how to tap into it, I think, is probably like just the most powerful thing ever. And I say, like, when we went through everything with Jackson, people would say to me, like, I don't know how you got, I was posting every day on Facebook to keep people updated on her progress and what we were doing. And I honestly just needed the support. And people would say to me, like, months later, like, I don't know how you did it. And they were like, I prayed for you every day. And I was like, that's how I did it. I felt you praying for us. And it was so powerful and so
Yeah.
strengthening that's how
Yeah.
I did it. Like, I literally just tapped into like everybody sending us this healing energy.
It's really extremely powerful for coping with any challenge is like kind of surrendering to like something greater than yourself. It just helps you realize that you don't have to do it all yourself. So Yeah.
Yes. Dr. Molly, thank you.
Thank you.
Truly appreciate you
Yeah.
and all that you're
Okay.
doing and for all
Have
of
a,
your time today.
I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day,
Thank you.
and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Thank you. You too. I'm going to hit stop, but you have to wait a minute for it to do its thing.